an article in the Wall Street Journal, quoting today from Brook's piece, "It's Time to Phase Out Freddie and Fannie." An article in the Wall Street Journal today illustrates the hopeless futures of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The companies have so far swallowed $111 billion in taxpayer money with no end in sight. And this from Brook and the Ayn Rand Center for Individual Rights, AYNRAND.org. Dr. Brook, welcome back to our program.
Thanks for having me on.
You're absolutely right. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a mess. They're sucking down money like a hog in a trough. Absolutely right.
Well, and they've been a mess for decades.
About 20 years.
For 20 years at least.
Yeah.
And they are partially behind, this whole financial crisis. They're a big part of this. I think they should be broken up. They should be, basically privatized, eliminated. If we want to explicitly support home ownership in America, fine. Let's tax Americans and let's subsidize people's homes. Let's make it explicit. Let's have a big debate. But this is a sneaky, roundabout way of doing the same thing, and a lot of people are getting rich over these subsidies. Primarily, the executives of Freddie and Fannie. It's just
yes.
Amazing to me.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you, and right across the board on that. And here's the history that probably our listeners don't know: that the Federal National Mortgage Association, Fannie Mae, was started during the Great Depression. It was started in 1938 as part of the New Deal's trinity of housing agencies, and same with Freddie Mac. And that these programs actually, when they were government agencies that were backstopping banks for mortgages, they actually worked. Nobody got filthy rich. Nobody was paid anything more than a government salary to participate or work in them. Mortgage brokers never went broke during that time. The government's insurance programs, in fact, regularly turned a profit. These programs actually made a profit for the government because they were so solid and so stable. And this quaint, archaic concept, they actually worked in the public interest. They worked to the good of everybody. But then in 1968, in the Lyndon Johnson administration, as part of an attempt to get them off the government books, and part of the early attempts to privatize things, Lyndon Johnson semi-privatized them. It took a little more than a decade before the brightest and the best in the Clinton administration and some of their corporate buddies figured out, hey, here's Freddie and Fannie, and they've been partially privatized. Why don't we go in? I mean, there's still government guarantees here. We can make a pile of money with this thing and screw the average American. And they did so under private management. Fannie did a 180. It was just totally, they started buying these Alt-A loans. They never did buy the subprimes, but they bought the Alt-A's, which, created a disaster.
Well,
so here we have this cycle you're on. The government creates something good that works. The private market takes it over and loses hundreds of billions of dollars, and then the government bails it out. It's nuts.
You see, you're perverting a little bit because even you said it wasn't completely privatized, right? It was semi-privatized.
That's right. That's right. Which was wrong.
That to me is the real problem. But when it worked as a government entity, they were very small. They had minimal impacts on the market. They created the securitization.
Well, they had a huge impact actually because they made it possible for people to buy homes.
Yes, but again, sure. I mean, you could subsidize people's homes. That there's no problem with the government doing that. I think it's bad. I think it's wrong, but it can work. It's not going to cause a financial crisis. It's only going to cause a financial crisis when when their debt is subsidized the way it was, and when they're allowed to leverage. I think they were at some point 1,000 to 1. That could not exist. You talked about laissez-faire capitalism before. That could not exist in laissez-faire capitalism.
No, I agree. Although something equally awful could in laissez-faire capitalism. I mean, if there were no rules, you don't want the government saying that a bank, for example, has to have a 10 to 1, debt to equity ratio.
No, but you know what actually happens?
You don't want there to be any rules on banks.
Yeah, but wait. What actually happens when the government has no debt-to-equity ratio provisions, because that's what happened before the 1930s, banks had 2 to 1. Banks had
whatever they damn well pleased, and we never went more than 15 years from the founding of this country until 1935 without a bank panic.
Well, so banks went under, but there were periods in which the good banks were 1 to 1. That is, that the market would never allow a bank to go more than 2, maybe 3 to 1. 10 to 1 is only made possible through government regulations, and the systemic disasters like a Great Depression and like what we're experiencing right now can only happen when the government has its hands throughout the economy and primarily throughout the banking system. We do not have laissez-faire capitalism. That's not what's going to take over. Maybe some form of corporatism.
Let me get this straight.
But laissez-faire capitalism does not exist in the United States, and you know that.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And in fact, the only places where true laissez-faire capitalism, government's keeping its hands off the altogether, are operating are places like Somalia and Haiti.
Oh, not true. Not true. Haiti.
But let me get you.
And foreign is all over the place.
Let me get. Actually, no. The government is so incompetent and dysfunctional down there. It's much closer to laissez-faire than the United States. No. Let's say that. But it sounds to me like what you're saying is.
Laissez-faire assumes property rights. There are no property rights in Somalia. There are no property rights in Haiti.
There absolutely are in Haiti. It's about the only thing the government forces down there is property rights.
Laissez-faire assumes a government that protects property rights. That's pretty much all it does, or one of the few things it does, but it protects property rights, so there's no such thing as capitalism without property rights. And there are no property rights in Haiti or Somalia.
Well, we're going to have to disagree on that. So what you're saying is that from the founding of this country up until 1935, when there was virtually no regulation on banks, and we had a major national bank panic at least every 15 years, that was a great time. And from 1935 until the 1980s, when there were heavy regulations on banks and we didn't have a single bank panic, that was a bad time because that was government regulation. Am I getting this right?
Yeah, well, a little bit, right? So,
got about a minute. You're on.
Yeah, since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, we've had 3 major economic catastrophes and lots of little ones. The 3 big ones were the Great Depression, inflation of the 70s, and the current one, all caused by government regulations, by government control.
Well, I would say the current one was caused by the deregulation.
The previous ones, from the founding of America till the establishment of the Fed, first the economy grew at a much, 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 much faster rate. The absorption of immigrants, the number of job creations,
the Industrial Revolution,
unprecedented in human history. And at the same time, the bank panics were relatively mild, but banks were heavily regulated even then. They were just regulated at the state level, not a federal level, and I don't advocate for that either. We've never had, unfortunately, laissez-faire banking in this country. If we did, we'd have a stable banking system and no panics.
I think if we did, we'd have all of us being serfs and slaves to the banks. But
Well, we started out agreeing, and we'll end this.
Okay. You're on, Brook. AyanRand.org, the website. Thanks, Yaron, for dropping by.
Always a pleasure.